imagine stepping into a nation where, all those old headaches of bureaucracy just
Yeah.
vanish.
Vanish, like what?
Well, the endless waiting lines, right? The
Yeah.
stacks of forms you have to fill out over and over. And that nagging fear that your tax money isn't really going where it should, maybe it's being lost to corruption.
Okay, yeah. That sounds familiar, unfortunately.
Picture this instead. A government system that runs so smoothly, so efficiently, that tax collection happens instantly. Resource allocation is like surgically precise.
Wow.
And anytime you need to interact with the state, it happens right away. We're talking about governance that literally never sleeps, driven by logic, not by lethargy.
Okay, so you're painting a picture of, well, welcome to the era of the algorithmic nation.
Exactly.
This whole concept, it's not science fiction anymore. It's not just for futurists or, computer scientists. This is actually the current active frontier in public administration.
Right.
Right now, we are moving towards a world where data doesn't just inform policy, it kind of becomes the policy.
Becomes the policy.
Well, sophisticated artificial intelligence, AI, steps in. It starts to replace that traditional, slow, very human-heavy bureaucracy and replaces it with systems designed for, well, real-time optimization, transparency, and, crucially, accountability.
Okay, let's really unpack this because the stakes here feel, well, monumental, don't they?
Absolutely.
We've done a deep dive looking into this really insightful analysis. It was put together by Mr. Zaheer Ahmad Meer. He's a constitutional and corporate lawyer.
Ah, interesting. So not purely a tech perspective.
Exactly. And the fact that this analysis comes from someone deep in governance rather than just a technologist, I think it lends real crucial weight to the discussion. We were talking about the ethical side, the structural elements.
Right.
It moves it beyond just, programming challenges into foundational laws, civil rights even.
That's a key point. So our mission today for you listening is really clearly defined. We want to unpack what this, well, revolutionary transformation actually means on the ground. We need to look critically at the huge efficiency gains that are already happening. We're seeing this especially in developing nations, where bureaucracy can often be a major choke point on progress.
Choke point, yeah.
But, and this is maybe the most important part, we have to spend the time needed to understand the critical, absolutely non-negotiable ethical and philosophical guardrails.
Guardrails, okay.
We have to ensure that when AI governs, it fundamentally serves the people first, not just, the technical specs written by the programmers.
Right, because that's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who is it really serving?
Precisely.
So let's start with a basic definition. Algorithmic governance. It sounds very academic, maybe a bit like a buzzword. What exactly are we defining here?
Okay, yeah, fair point. Simply put, algorithmic governance is the strategic, systemic, and pretty deep integration of AI capabilities.
Like machine learning.
Exactly. Machine learning, predictive modeling, automated decision-making, all used to analyze these massive governmental and social data sets.
Huge amounts of data.
Huge. And the goal is to predict optimal outcomes and ultimately optimize governmental decisions and services. But the core purpose isn't just speed, although, speed is a fantastic byproduct.
Sure.
It's targeted very specifically at reducing the biggest historical drains on, well, the public purse and public trust.
Which are?
Chronic inefficiency, systemic waste, and pervasive corruption. These are the big ones.
Right.
So we're looking at technology being deployed almost as a tool for, let's say, administrative purification. Strengthening institutional integrity.
Administrative purification. That's a strong phrase. It's fascinating how you tie that directly to technology.
Well, it suggests, doesn't it, that maybe human systems, just by their nature, sometimes need this kind of incorruptible digital layer to function at their best.
An incorruptible layer.
And what's more, the scope of this optimization is actually changing the very nature of governing itself.
Also.
Well, when we talk about a government that never sleeps, we mean policy execution shifts. It moves from, say, a yearly cycle of budget reviews and approval.
The old way.
The old way, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
To continuous real-time optimization. Think about it. If traffic lights can adjust based on an accident that happened 10 miles away, in real time,
yeah, we see that now.
then shouldn't infrastructure spending do something similar? Adjust based on real-time needs, real-time resource availability.
That makes sense. A continuous loop.
That continuous loop, that's really the essence of the algorithmic nation.
Okay, so to really get our heads around the scale of this opportunity, we probably need to look at some global blueprints, right? Examples already out there.
Absolutely. It's easy to dismiss this as just theory, but actually many nations are already quite far down this path, and they're showcasing distinct models of algorithmic governance.
So it's not just one size fits all.
Definitely not. What's fascinating is that the global context gives us a spectrum, really. We can look at what I call maybe the high-trust, frictionless service model.
Yeah.
Estonia is the classic example there.
Estonia, right. Heard a lot about them.
And then you have the other end, maybe the large-scale hyper-optimization model. We see examples of this often in projects coming out of China.
Okay, two different approaches.
Yeah, and these two approaches kind of define the current landscape, technologically speaking.
So let's start with Estonia. Their e-government system, it's pretty famous in digital transformation circles, often held up as the gold standard. What's the magic there? What's the mechanism behind their success?
Well, Estonia is a prime example, and they've been at it a long time. They showcase AI and data systems being used for really efficient, citizen-centric services. Their system isn't just about, putting paper forms online. That's not the core of it.
Okay.
Crucially, they developed something called the X-Road system.
X-Road.
Yeah. Think of it as a distributed data exchange layer. It allows different government databases to communicate securely with each other.
Oh, okay. So they can talk to each other.
Exactly. So when you, as a citizen, submit a piece of information, let's say your address, you only have to do it once.
Only once. That's the dream.
Right. The X-Road architecture makes sure that when you interact with, say, the tax office or the police or the health service, they can securely and instantly access the necessary, consistent data about you. The data they're permitted to see, of course.
So it implements that once-only principle we hear about. That's huge for convenience, obviously. But how does that specifically relate to AI or algorithmic governance?
Well, it builds the foundation. It creates the necessary trust and data consistency that you need for AI to work reliably.
Got it.
Because the data sources are consistent, they're verifiable through X-Rood's decentralized trust framework, the government can then confidently deploy algorithms to handle routine decisions.
Like what kind of decisions?
Things like issuing permits, calculating pension benefits, maybe processing business registrations. These can be done with high speed and really minimal human intervention.
And that consistency.
Yeah.
It does more than just speed things up.
Oh, absolutely. It minimizes the opportunities for human error, for one, but critically, it also reduces the chances for corruption aimed at personal gain. Someone demanding a bribe to find your file or speed things up.
Right.
It establishes trust because the law is applied predictably, quickly, and consistently.
Okay, so that's the Estonian model, high trust, citizen-centric. How does that contrast with China's approach?
Yeah.
You mentioned the city brain projects. That sounds like it operates on a totally different philosophy, a different scale, maybe.
Completely different scale and, yes, arguably a different philosophy, too. China's city brain projects, they really showcase the scope of monitoring and managing large-scale municipal aspects in real time.
Municipal aspects like what?
Well, the system aggregates and processes these massive continuous data streams. We're talking everything from traffic sensors, utility consumption figures, environmental monitoring data, even security camera feeds.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
It's enormous. And the goal is hyper-optimization across basically every urban service.
Hyper-optimization.
Yeah. For instance, in Hangzhou, where one of the first major deployments happened, the system dynamically adjusts traffic light timings across the entire metro area.
Not just locally.
No, citywide. And it's not just based on the sensors at that intersection. It correlates mobile device movement data, public transport schedules, real-time accident reports, all processed within milliseconds to optimize traffic flow.
That level of optimization, I mean, it sounds incredibly efficient for moving people and goods around a city, but doesn't it immediately bring up that tension, the one the lawyer's analysis must confront?
Which tension is that?
Well, doesn't achieving that kind of optimization inherently require massive data centralization and widespread surveillance? How does the analysis square that circle? The tension between optimizing, say, public safety and potentially compromising individual privacy.
That is the essential critical question when you look at the city brain model. And to be clear, the lawyer's analysis doesn't endorse the centralized surveillance model wholesale. It uses it more to highlight the technical capability. The sheer power AI has to manage complexity that previously would have required massive, often inefficient human coordination.
So it shows what's possible.
Exactly. But the trade-off is indeed centralization, as you said. While the Estonian model really prioritizes decentralized data sovereignty, giving citizens more control over who accesses their data, the city brain model tends to prioritize public utility and systemic efficiency, sometimes seemingly above all else. The legal and ethical challenge, as the source highlights, is defining which data feeds are acceptable, which are necessary in a democracy that's aiming for accountability, versus maybe a more centralized state aiming for comprehensive control.
Right. It sets a technical baseline for what AI can achieve in managing complexity, but raises huge questions about how it should be used.
Precisely. It sets the stage perfectly.
Okay, so that gives us the international context, the range of possibilities. But let's bring the discussion back to the specific, immediate impacts cited in the source material. This felt incredibly compelling, the pilot deployment in Islamabad. It involved something called the Digital Future Governance Unit.
Yeah.
This wasn't just theory, was it? This was a targeted deployment. And the source says it had instant, measurable results aimed squarely at corruption.
This is really where the theoretical potential smashes into undeniable proof of concept, especially, as you said, for governments that might be struggling with administrative inertia, maybe corruption. The Islamabad pilot focused intensely on real-time monitoring and verification, looking at public projects, administrative processes using an advanced AI platform. And the impact, as you noted, wasn't gradual. It was immediate. It was disruptive.
Immediate. Okay, give us the headline figure. What did it do for administrative efficiency?
Okay, get this. Within just weeks of deployment, the platform identified issues that caused the rate of delayed government contracts.
Ah, the ones stuck in limbo forever.
Exactly. Those contracts perpetually stuck in bureaucratic red tape, or maybe deliberately slowed down for illicit financial gain. That rate dropped by a staggering 60%.
60%.
60, 6-0.
Wow. That's an immediate, massive gain in administrative efficiency. It feels like it bypasses months, maybe years, of traditional reform efforts, right? Like retraining staff, changing cultures. This sounds like a systemic fix.
It really is. And think about the human impact of that number, that 60% reduction.
Yeah.
It means public works, maybe a new school, a critical road expansion, a hospital wing, are actually getting completed closer to schedule.
Right. Things people need.
Things people need. It translates directly into better public services, immediate improvements in infrastructure. That's something citizens feel instantly,
Well,
you know?
absolutely. And the financial accountability side was, well, maybe even more dramatic and perhaps more, I don't know, morally satisfying. The AI quickly detected and eliminated ghost employees from the payrolls.
Ah, yes, the ghost employees.
We're not talking about small accounting mistakes here, are we? This is organized fraud.
Precisely. The source material really details this as a critical proof point. Ghost employees, they're non-existent personnel, sometimes deceased individuals whose names just stay on the payrolls.
Siphoning off funds.
Fraudulently draining public funds into private pockets, exactly. The AI managed to stop this by cross-referencing payments against multiple, ideally immutable data points.
Like what sort of data points?
Things like biometric records, fingerprints, maybe facial recognition, real-time access logs to government buildings, pension records, even utility usage logs at official government addresses.
Okay, so the human system allowed this corruption because it was relatively easy to hide a fake name in a huge ledger, right?
Yeah.
Lost in the noise.
Yeah, lost in the noise, hard to spot.
But the AI system made it basically impossible because that fake name had no matching biometric signature, no digital footprint of actually showing up for work.
That's the power of the algorithmic approach in this context. It automatically structures the process in a way that closes that loophole. It connects the dots that a human might miss or might be incentivized to ignore.
The implication there is profound, isn't it? Technology acts as this powerful, incorruptible, or at least much less corruptible and tireless force.
Tireless, yeah. 4-7.
And it solves these deep-seated administrative, even ethical issues. Problems that human administrators might be, well, maybe too compromised or too fearful or maybe just too overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data to tackle effectively.
That's a great summary of it. Overwhelmed is often a key factor.
That specific anecdote, the Islamabad pilot, feels vital because it proves the immense potential for tech to actually tackle these twin scourges, waste and corruption. It shifts the conversation, doesn't it? From some future possibility to present-day realized cost savings, which, especially in a developing nation context, that money can be immediately repurposed for social good, education, healthcare.
Absolutely critical. And this success, this proof point, it directly informs the national vision that's discussed in the source material. For developing nations, like the example cited, the potential isn't just about fixing current problems. It's about fundamentally redesigning the state's infrastructure,
Hmm.
moving from, a 20th century paper-based model to a 21st century digital one.
Right.
They have this unique opportunity in some ways to establish a national governance AI hub, something focused specifically on those core democratic needs: transparency, accountability, better planning, optimize resource allocation, building it right from the foundation up.
It's almost like a chance to leapfrog, isn't it? To skip over centuries of accumulated bureaucratic inefficiency and baggage.
That's exactly the concept,
Yeah.
leapfrogging. If you're starting relatively fresh or you're undergoing really aggressive reform, you don't have to default to building a complex, paper-based hierarchical system that's prone to manual intervention and, frankly, political patronage.
You build something different.
You build something transparent, data-driven, accountable from the start. This vision, it connects right back to that core goal: ensuring public resources are allocated based on genuine need, on verifiable effectiveness, using impartial criteria, which really is the definition of good governance.
But, okay, this immense power, this efficiency, it brings us right back to that immediate, unavoidable tension. The source material acknowledges it perfectly, actually, with a direct warning from a legislator.
Ah, yes, the senator's warning.
It transitions us immediately, doesn't it? From the excitement of the cost savings to the absolute necessity of ethical reflection.
It cuts right to the heart of the matter. The quote was, "When machines govern, who will they listen to, the people or the programmers?"
That one sentence just forces you to pause, doesn't it? If AI is the new engine driving governance, we absolutely have to talk about who's holding the steering wheel. And maybe more profoundly, what moral map are we programming into the GPS?
It raises fundamental questions about control, doesn't it? About auditability, about ultimate sovereignty. A machine only follows its programmed parameters. That's all it does.
Right.
So if those parameters are set by, say, a narrow group of technical elites, maybe without enough public consultation, or, and this is critical, if the underlying data itself reflects historical bias against certain groups,
Then the efficiency gains could be wiped out.
exactly, then the gains in efficiency could be tragically overshadowed by a massive loss of public trust, a loss of fairness. The speed of the AI would only accelerate the speed of injustice if the programming itself is flawed.
Okay, let's pivot now and really zero in on the specific benefits AI offers developing nations. Places where, as you said, administrative bottlenecks and corruption often represent the most significant systemic hurdles to progress: economic progress, social progress.
Right. The promise here is potentially transformative, precisely because the starting point, the base level of efficiency, is often so low. Even modest improvements can have a huge impact. So, yeah, we can systematically explore where AI seems to deliver the highest, most critical impact in these contexts.
Let's catalog those key benefits. The analysis highlights several. The first one listed is automating tax and subsidy systems.
Yeah.
Why is this specific application considered such a revolutionary game changer, especially in more fragile economies?
Well, think about it. In many developing economies, revenue collection can be notoriously inefficient. It often relies on outdated systems, manual processes, and personnel who might wield excessive, often opaque discretion.
Opaque discretion. That sounds like a recipe for problems.
It creates ample opportunity, unfortunately, for bribery, for intentional underreporting. Automated tax systems, on the other hand, remove a lot of that friction. They eliminate, or at least drastically reduce, the potential for human interference in the calculation and collection process.
It's the consistency, isn't it, that makes the biggest difference?
Consistency is absolutely key. AI can analyze economic activity data, maybe transaction records, import-export data, cross-reference spending patterns from various digital sources, and then calculate tax obligations with machine precision. And consistency. This helps reduce underreporting, ensures a more equitable sharing of the tax burden, and importantly, automation ensures that everyone is treated according to the same published rules applied instantly.
No special deals.
Ideally, no special deals. The system calculates the liability, it issues the demand, it tracks the payment, all with minimal manual input needed.
Okay, that's the collection side. But the same principle applies powerfully to the distribution of subsidies too, right? Which can often be hijacked by local corruption or inefficiency.
Oh, absolutely. This is maybe even more critical for impacting poverty directly. Instead of these lengthy, opaque, often paper-based processes to figure out who's eligible for, say, poverty stipends or agricultural support or energy subsidies.
Yeah, which can take months.
Exactly. AI can potentially verify need much more quickly using various social and economic indicators pulled from different databases. And then it can facilitate the distribution of funds directly and instantly to the verified citizen, often using digital channels like mobile money.
So it cuts out the middlemen.
Precisely. Cutting out multiple layers of middlemen, maybe local administrators, regional bank managers, various clerks, that dramatically reduces the opportunities for those funds to be siphoned off or delayed or for fees to be extracted.
Right.
It maximizes the proportion of the subsidy that actually reaches the person it was intended for.
That makes a huge difference. Okay, the second area highlighted is something we often don't think about until there's a catastrophic failure. Infrastructure management. Specifically predictive infrastructure maintenance. You called this a strategic shift earlier.
It really represents a fundamental shift, economically and in terms of governance philosophy, from being reactive to being proactive. Stewards, not just firefighters.
Explain that.
Historically, most infrastructure maintenance is reactive, right? You wait for a road to crumble, a water pipe to burst, a bridge to show obvious structural weakness.
And then you panic.
And then you mobilize emergency funds for repairs. This approach is incredibly costly, it's inefficient, it's disruptive to people's lives.
And often extremely dangerous too, potentially risking lives.
Exactly. Very dangerous. The shift to predictive maintenance uses AI to process these vast, often disparate data sets.
What kind of data?
Sensor data may be embedded in structures like bridges, historical failure rates for similar assets, traffic volume data, material stress information, even environmental conditions, temperature swings, humidity, soil moisture.
Okay.
The AI takes all this, models it, and then predicts when and where a failure is statistically most likely to occur before it happens.
So you can fix it before it breaks.
Exactly. This allows governments to schedule preventative repairs efficiently, precisely, and crucially before a critical failure actually manifests.
Let's talk about the economics of that shift.
Yeah.
What's the actual measurable saving? Is it significant?
Oh, the long-term economic savings are potentially exponential. Think about a city's main water supply pipe.
Correct.
A reactive repair after it bursts. That involves emergency labor, usually at premium rates. Massive public disruption, roads closed, businesses affected, potential property damage from flooding, and obviously a temporary cutoff of essential services.
All right, the costs stack up quickly.
The cost can easily run into hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, for just one single major incident. By contrast, preventative maintenance, scheduled maybe months in advance based on an AI prediction.
Yeah.
That involves standard labor costs, hopefully minimal disruption because it's planned, and ideally zero collateral damage. Replacing a section of pipe that the AI flagged as highly stressed before it bursts saves you all the costs of the catastrophic failure, the potential lawsuits, the secondary economic impacts of the service disruption.
That just makes sense.
It saves orders of magnitude more money over the entire lifespan of that asset. It's a much smarter way to manage public resources.
Okay, that's a really clear, compelling case. Efficiency tied directly to public safety and long-term fiscal health. And the third benefit listed in the analysis, this feels critical for building democratic trust. Real-time audit trails.
Ah, yes. Transparency. It's arguably the ultimate antidote to systemic corruption and public mistrust.
How does AI enable this in real time?
Well, when governmental transactions, fund transfers, contract approvals, procurement processes are routed, recorded, and processed through an AI-driven digital platform, especially if it uses something like blockchain or distributed ledger technology for immutable records, as some related literature suggests.
Rather than making it tamper-proof.
Exactly. You gain instant verifiable audit records. Every key decision, every fund transfer, every stage of a contract negotiation is logged and trackable in real time. Not 6 months later during an annual audit when the paper trail might have conveniently vanished.
This sounds like a system that doesn't just make it easier to investigate fraud after the fact, that actually acts as a powerful deterrent before it happens.
That is the key distinction, yes. Traditional audits are mostly post-mortem exams, right? They check if corruption occurred.
Looking backward.
Looking backwards. Real-time audit trails mean that corruption becomes difficult, maybe almost impossible, to conceal as it is happening.
Yeah.
The mere existence of an instant, immutable audit trail acts as this powerful 204/7 deterrent. Any human actor contemplating illicit activity knows their actions are being logged immediately and permanently. It shifts the whole system towards inherent integrity.
Okay, this brings us perfectly to that professional case study you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The specific powerful anecdote about the Pakistani province that integrated AI into its budgeting process. This feels like the moment where these abstract benefits suddenly become millions of dollars saved instantly. It validates the whole philosophy, doesn't it?
It really does. This case study is the perfect, almost visceral illustration of technology directly intercepting administrative waste and potential fraud. So, a specific provincial government in Pakistan implemented an AI system into its budgeting, its procurement, and its contract management processes.
What was the main goal?
The aim was explicitly to identify efficiencies, yes, but also anomalies, things that didn't look right. And the results were, well, immediate and pretty fascinating.
Okay, tell us the payoff. How exactly did the old human system fail, and what did the AI spot instantly?
Well, the system's primary function was sophisticated anomaly detection. It wasn't just checking if the numbers added up in a spreadsheet.
Right, more complex than that.
Much more. It was cross-referencing things like vendor IDs, project descriptions, even the geospatial coordinates of proposed projects, payment schedules, comparing all of that against a massive historical database of millions of past transactions.
Okay, looking for patterns.
Looking for suspicious patterns, exactly. And within its very first operational phase, it instantly detected a whole multitude of duplicate contracts, worth millions and millions of rupees.
Duplicate contracts. You mean literally they were billing twice for the exact same work? Or something slightly different?
It was often variations. Sometimes it seemed like historical, maybe already completed projects were somehow still drawing funds under a slightly different name or description.
Ah, clever.
Or sometimes subtle variations of the same proposed project being submitted by different local departments, probably trying to capitalize on fragmented human oversight, hoping nobody would notice the overlap.
But the AI noticed.
The AI flagged the discrepancies immediately because the underlying variables were too similar. An identical vendor ID combined with a nearly identical project description, or maybe identical GPS coordinates for a proposed road repair submitted by two different agencies. These triggered fraud alerts.
So, just to be clear, we're not talking about a dedicated team of human auditors spending 6 months digging through physical ledgers to maybe stumble upon this fraud.
No.
We're talking about an instantaneous algorithmic check that saved public money at the speed of computation.
At the speed of computation,
Yeah.
that's it. And that completely transforms the economic viability argument for digital governance, doesn't it?
It has to.
It validates the upfront investment in the technology. These systems can often generate a return on investment almost immediately, just through savings like these, preventing leakage.
And when this achievement was publicized, the source mentions the chief minister involved.
Yeah.
He synthesized this outcome, recognizing the the moral gravity of what the AI achieved beyond just efficiency. Used a powerful phrase.
Yes, the quote was, "Digital accountability with divine ethics."
Digital accountability with divine ethics. That's quite a statement.
It's a profound moral synthesis, isn't it? It forces us to bridge that gap between the technological function, what the machine does, and the underlying moral purpose of the state, why it does it.
How do you interpret that?
Well, it essentially says, look, the machine gives us unprecedented speed and reliability in achieving accountability. That's the digital accountability part. But its design, its operation, must be rooted in and guided by immutable moral standards, standards that define justice and trust within that particular society. That's the divine ethics part.
So the technology is the tool, but the values have to guide its use.
Exactly. This realization is the crucial transition point for our discussion, too. It's saying, yes, the efficiency gains are undeniable, they're powerful, but they only truly matter if they're coupled with fairness and justice.
Right. Because if the AI is just super efficient at executing an unjust or a biased system, then we haven't fundamentally solved anything. In fact, we might have made things worse by making injustice more efficient, more inescapable.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. The technology is the engine, sure. But ethics must be the fuel, and ethics must be the map guiding where that engine takes us. Efficiency is a measure of power, but the moral framework dictates the direction of that power. And this sets the stage perfectly for our deep dive into those necessary ethical and philosophical safeguards, the ones that absolutely must be hardwired into the algorithmic nation.
Okay, so it's definitely time now to move past just the exciting efficiency numbers, the cost savings, and really confront that core truth. Technology, powerful as it is, isn't some universal panacea, is it? Not at all. And when you start automating decisions that directly affect the lives, the welfare, the financial standing of millions of citizens,
Yeah.
well, the risks, if they're left unchecked, they scale up just as exponentially as the benefits.
Right, so if we don't program that moral map correctly, as you put it.
We risk automating injustice, baking it into the system. So we absolutely have to acknowledge the primary risks that are cited in the source material. And the first, and maybe the most dangerous one, is algorithmic bias.
Okay, algorithmic bias. Explain the danger here for someone who might assume, well, a machine is just logic, it's emotionless, objective. How can it be prejudiced?
That's a really common and critical misunderstanding. The bias doesn't typically come from the machine having its own prejudiced thoughts, of course.
Right.
The bias comes from the data it's trained on. And that data inevitably reflects historical human decisions, human biases, and existing societal realities.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say an AI is trained on decades of data related to how public services were allocated in the past. If that historical data shows that certain specific marginalized communities were consistently underserved, maybe they received less funding for schools or slower response times for emergency services,
Yeah.
the AI will learn that pattern. It learns that pattern of exclusion as the normal or correct way to predict resource allocation in the future. It doesn't know it's unfair, it just sees a statistical correlation.
Wow. So a system that we might design hoping to improve fairness could actually end up becoming this incredibly efficient engine for perpetuating historical oppression.
Exactly. Simply because the training data reflected an unjust past. It effectively codifies the status quo, or worse, amplifies it.
It automates prejudice then, at lightning speed and industrial scale.
That's the danger. It can create this seemingly objective technical wall that reinforces old societal barriers, making them even harder to challenge because they look like neutral outputs from a machine.
That's the paradox you mentioned, using predictive modeling in a complex social, political context.
Precisely. And this is why the necessity of rigorous human oversight and mandatory ethical AI policies isn't just, some bureaucratic box-ticking exercise. It's not optional. It is an essential systemic safety valve.
Okay, so what does that human oversight actually look like in a practical sense? Is it just like a committee that meets once a quarter to review things, or does it need to be more integrated?
Oh, it has to be highly integrated, continuous, not just a periodic check-in. It requires dedicated, trained human teams.
And not just tech people.
Absolutely not just programmers. You need ethicists, social scientists, legal experts, domain experts from the area the AI is working in, people who understand the social context. And their job is to continuously monitor the AI's output, ideally in near real time.
Looking for what specifically?
They must regularly and systematically test for disparate impact. That's a key concept. They need to check if the AI's decisions are disproportionately affecting different demographic groups.
Okay, give me an example of disparate impact.
Right. So let's say an AI system is automatically approving or denying applications for a crucial social subsidy. Maybe it's denying 50% of all applicants overall.
Okay.
The human oversight team's job is to dig deeper. Is that 50% denial rate evenly spread? Or is it actually denying, say, 80% of applicants from one specific region or one particular ethnic group and only 20% from others? That difference in outcome, even if unintentional, is disparate impact.
And if they find that kind of bias emerging, what power do these human overseers need to have?
They must have clear, unambiguous authority, the authority to intervene immediately, to demand a halt, maybe demand retraining of the AI model using different data or different parameters.
Or even switch it off?
Or, yes, in a worst-case scenario where the bias can't be quickly or easily corrected, they need the power to pull the plug entirely, to mandate a switch back to human-managed decision-making for that process until the AI can be fixed and proven fair.
So this oversight has to be a non-negotiable part of the system design from the very beginning.
Absolutely. It ensures the technology remains a tool for service, not some kind of sovereign entity making decisions we can't question or control.
This need for scrutiny, for questioning, it brings us to the safeguard that probably matters most to the individual listener, right? The citizen whose life is actually being affected by these complex, often invisible algorithms. And that's the right to explanation.
This is potentially the most crucial safeguard of all for maintaining democratic trust. and for protecting individual rights in this emerging algorithmic nation.
Why is it so critical?
Well, imagine you apply for something important, a housing permit, maybe a tax exemption you think you qualify for, a business loan, a social subsidy, and the system, maybe an online portal, denies your application.
Okay.
You cannot simply be told, sorry, your application failed the algorithmic check, full stop.
Right. That's the definition of a black box, isn't it? And that kind of opacity, it breeds profound mistrust, helplessness even.
Exactly. The source analysis really emphasizes this. The right to explanation means you have a legally enforceable ability as a citizen to understand the logic behind that decision.
Understand the logic. What does that entail?
It means understanding the specific data inputs that were used and the key parameters or rules the algorithm applied that led to your specific outcome.
So you can ask why.
You must be able to ask, and crucially, receive a clear, understandable answer. Something like, what were the 3 main factors that resulted in this denial? Was it because my declared household income was above threshold X? Was it because of a recent bankruptcy filing flagged in my credit record? Or was it simply based on the fact that my geographical location falls outside the designated service area for this program?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That ability to actually see inside the logic box, even just a little, it empowers you, doesn't it? It lets you appeal the decision based on concrete, potentially incorrect facts, rather than just fighting against some invisible, seemingly indifferent machine.
Precisely. It transitions the whole governance process from opaque, sometimes arbitrary bureaucracy to transparent, auditable machine logic. And the key takeaway here, again, is that this transparency can't just be a policy promise. It can't be an afterthought.
It has to be built in.
It has to be programmed into the system's architecture from day one. The algorithm itself must be required to generate a clear, human-readable rationale for every significant decision it makes that impacts an individual.
Okay, so this critical need for built-in transparency, for built-in fairness, it leads us to the final, really fascinating element that was highlighted in the source material. And that's the explicit alignment of all this algorithmic transparency, fairness, with deep ethical and moral frameworks. Specifically, the source looks at it through the lens of faith, creating almost a mandate for moral design.
Yes, this connection provides an incredibly robust foundation, I think, a non-secular moral grounding for the entire technological effort. It draws upon centuries of established ethical thought within a specific tradition. The source material references 2 specific Islamic principles that serve as really powerful, ideal design imperatives for how algorithmic governance should function.
Okay, that's fascinating. What are those core moral values, and how do they translate into, actual programming requirements?
The first principle mentioned is ideal. This translates roughly as justice or absolute fairness, equity.
Ideal justice.
Yes, and it's not just superficial fairness, like treating everyone the same on the surface. It's deeper. It's the requirement that the system must operate impartially and actively ensure equitable outcomes based on merit and genuine need. This principle essentially mandates that an AI system designed with ideal in mind must inherently fight against bias and disparate impact. It's not enough for it to be neutral. It must actively promote justice.
Wow, so in programming terms, what would that look like? How do you code for ideal?
Well, it means the system has to be continually audited specifically to ensure it applies the rule of law or the program rules consistently, regardless of a person's status, their wealth, their background. You'd need to eliminate variables or very carefully weigh variables that could introduce unfair bias.
So if ideal is the principle of justice, then the technical requirement is things like constant algorithmic auditing, bias detection, and remediation loops built into the system.
Exactly. The design must actively ensure that variables that are known to correlate with historical marginalization, maybe things like certain geographical postcodes or certain demographic labels that aren't directly relevant to the decision, are either excluded entirely or weighted very, very carefully to avoid perpetuating past injustices. It's an active process.
Okay, that's adult justice. What's the second principle?
The second one cited is sukya, amanat. This translates to trust, fiduciary duty, or stewardship, holding something in trust for another.
Amanat, trust or stewardship. That feels immediately relevant to data governance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Amanat speaks directly to data custody and accountability. This principle implies that the government, and by extension the AI systems it deploys, are acting as sacred custodians. custodians of the people's data, and custodians of public resources.
A sacred trust.
Yes. And this requires absolute non-negotiable transparency and the responsible use of that trust. If the data is entrusted to the system must act entirely and demonstrably in the public good, not for hidden purposes, not for private gain.
So if the guiding principle is Amanat, trust, the technical requirement goes beyond just, say, basic data security, like encryption.
Much further. It mandates public auditability of the system itself. Amanat requires that the code, where feasible and secure, and that decision-making processes are not hidden away in a black box.
So more transparency.
Yes. It pushes towards things like mandatory public-facing audit reports that detail algorithmic performance, maybe report on any detected bias or drift. It pushes towards source code transparency, at least for public scrutiny where national security doesn't absolutely forbid it. And definitely clear explanations for any policy changes that are driven by the AI's outputs.
It really forces the system designers and the government using the system to treat data protection and public accountability almost like a religious duty, doesn't it? Not just a legal compliance checklist item.
That's the idea. The machine and the humans overseeing it must be continually accountable to the people whose trust, Amanat, they hold.
This really elevates the conversation, doesn't it? Beyond just mere technical compliance into a genuine mandate for moral design. It suggests that the most efficient system, perhaps counterintuitively, might actually be the one that's rooted most deeply in these ethical principles.
I think that's the powerful conclusion the source draws, yes. That AI systems must be designed and deployed to actively reflect and reinforce these foundational moral values in their very function. Transparency, fairness, accountability, these can't be bolted on later as an afterthought.
They have to be in the DNA.
They have to be programmed into the DNA of the algorithmic nation from the start. #outro.
Wow. Okay, this has been a profoundly detailed journey, hasn't it? Right through the blueprint for what could be the future of public administration. We've seen the sheer power of optimization, but also the absolute necessity of these robust ethical frameworks.
It covers a lot of ground, definitely.
So let's try to bring the conversation full circle now. Let's reiterate those core insights, the real nuggets of knowledge that we've extracted from this source material today, the things that you, the listener, should really take away.
Okay, 3 key takeaways. First, I think we learned that AI can undoubtedly make governance smarter. It can deliver huge efficiencies, incredible administrative speed, significant financial savings, but
There's always a but.
there's a big but. Only if deep ethical values make it fairer. Efficiency without fairness, as we discussed, simply automates and accelerates any pre-existing injustice. So, smarter and fairer.
Smarter and fairer. Got it. Okay. Second key takeaway.
Second, that key safeguard for the individual citizen, the defense against the tyranny of the black box algorithm. That's the right to explanation. And this means that transparency has to be an active, functional quality of the system. It must be programmed into the system's architecture, not merely promised vaguely in some policy document somewhere.
Right. You need to be able to audit the logic.
The citizen must be able to understand and audit the logic that affects their life. Programmed, not promised.
Programmed, not promised. I like that. And the third, insight.
And third, we saw how technology, especially something as powerful as AI in governance, finds its strongest and most trustworthy foundation when it's explicitly anchored in clear moral principles.
Like Adel and Eminat.
Exactly. The specific synthesis discussed linking concepts like justice, Adel, and trust or stewardship, Amanat, directly to algorithmic design requirements. It shows that moral philosophy and technical specifications absolutely must walk together. They have to inform each other if we want to build genuinely trustworthy, fair, and enduring governmental systems for the future.
Faith and data walking together, in a sense.
Faith and data, values and code walking together, yes.
Okay. So after this really deep dive into the practical nuts and bolts and the ethical infrastructure of this potential algorithmic nation, what does it all really mean for you, the listener? What's the profound so what of this whole transformation?
I think the implication is massive. It's this. Algorithmic governance isn't just about reducing paperwork or catching a few ghost employees or making trains run on time, as important as those things are.
It's bigger than that.
It's about fundamentally redesigning the social contract, the relationship between the state and the citizen. When core decisions about your subsidies, your taxes, the infrastructure in your neighborhood, the permits you need are being made by code. That code effectively assumes a status equivalent to a form of law.
The code becomes law.
In a very real sense. So we are, right now, defining the future quality of our democracy, the nature of our justice system, the fairness of our economy through the ethics or lack thereof that we choose to embed in our algorithms today.
Wow.
The debate really isn't whether AI will play a role in governance anymore. That ship has sailed. The question is how it will govern us, and whether we have the foresight and the will to ensure its operating system is based on our highest, most cherished moral ideals, not just on maximizing efficiency metrics.
That really puts the responsibility on us now, doesn't it? And that leads us perfectly into a final, truly thought-provoking idea, something drawing directly from the source's closing statements, maybe for future consideration. We focused intensely today on how AI is transforming the bureaucracy that manages nations, the operational functions of the state, right?
Yes, the administration, the delivery of services.
If AI is proving itself capable of optimizing government operations, optimizing resource allocation, maintaining near absolute accountability in these incredibly complex systems, the ultimate question it presents, maybe the next frontier, is how will this same capability now transform the even more foundational systems, the systems of learning and human development?
Education, human potential.
Exactly. Think about it. If AI can run a national payroll perfectly, detect duplicate contracts instantly, how will it now potentially transform our educational systems, the very engine of human potential, the absolute foundation of every future nation?
How could it do that?
Could it customize learning pathways for every single student? Track individual cognitive development in ways we can't imagine now? Could it truly personalize the unlocking of human potential, not just for a privileged few, but at a national scale?
That is a huge question.
That feels like the next great systemic challenge and maybe opportunity facing this emerging algorithmic world. Beyond governing the state, can it help us better nurture the citizens within the state? That's something to think about.